bus. Maybe we need another induction so that members understand what are standing orders. So I don't see any standing order, and I'm sure, Mr. Speaker, you will agree with me, so I'll ignore and proceed. Mr. Speaker, I'm reading what is in paragraph 10 of His Excellency President William Ruto's speech. He says we have to dislodge ethnicity as the central organizing principle of our politics. And he says we need to do away with the politics of exclusion, politics of discrimination, politics of tribalism. And the point I'm making this afternoon on the floor of this House, Mr. Speaker, is that I'm looking to a time when we shall have a president who will pick cabinet secretaries from at least half of the 42 ethnic groups in this country, so that we walk the talk of saying we want to dislodge ethnicity as the central organizing principle of our politics. That's the point I'm making, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we want our children to also grow knowing that even if they were born in Nyamira, we may be as a minority with 1 million votes, Mr. Speaker, but they have a right also to get an opportunity to serve in cabinet, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on Sunday, I believe, I was watching television, Mr. Speaker, and I saw the senator for Tana River, who comes from one of the most marginalized areas. He was protesting, Mr. Speaker, and asking, of the 22, at least one should have come from Tana River, Mr. Speaker. And I support Senator Mungatana. That exclusion is not right, Mr. Speaker. That exclusion is not right, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker,
Senator Chelagay Samson.
Mr. Speaker,
what is out of order again, you know?
Mr.
Because
Speaker,
members, I think, you should wait for your time to contribute.
No, I'm rising on a point of order, Mr. Speaker, as per Standing Order 96, raising on the issue that the senior counsel who succeeded me in the JLAC is misleading the nation. If it comes to appointments, Article 10 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, on national values and principles of good governance, sets out on how appointments should be done. Casting aspersions to individuals that have been appointed as cabinet nominees is misleading the nation. The guiding principle. No, Mr. Speaker, let me build. You know, senior counsel, I didn't know you can be a heckler. I used to know you can keep quiet and listen. You are joining the Secretary General Edwin Sifuna in heckling. You should not stop heckling. Can you listen? Can you listen? You will speak. Can you listen, Mr. Speaker? Protect me.
Let us, you know, I'm trying to get a point of order.
Correct.
So please let us give him time.
You know, heckling is their profession, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the point I'm raising, it is out of order to profile individuals and Kenyans that have been nominated based. And talking about minorities and majority, this has been captured. And the cabinet, Mr. Speaker, and the cabinet is yet to be complete. There are PSS to be appointed, there are CSS to be appointed, and government is an entity. Government, Mr. Speaker, is not a cabinet. And therefore, when you look at these national values and principles of good governance, Mr. Speaker, there is a guiding principle for the president to be guided by the Constitution, not to be guided by comments of Senator of Nyamira. Mr. Speaker, I should be grateful that one of his tribesmen, Mheshimiwa Machogu, is the nominee of education, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, he is out of order to try and profile Kenyans. And if he has an issue, he must bring a substantive motion to discuss those individuals as per the standing orders. Mr. Speaker, I thought I did a good handing over when he succeeded me as the chair JLAC, but I can see him in camera and maybe still guide him around. I know he's my senior-in-law, but other things he needs to be guided upon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Kindly conclude, Senator Mugen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm happy that you have, by your ruling, you have made the conclusion that there is no substantive point of order that was raised by my friend Chelagay. Senator Cherargei. So, Mr. Speaker, not to belabor that point, Mr. Speaker, let us build a country that values all the 42 ethnic groups, Mr. Speaker. That's the only time we'll be able to walk the talk when we say that we want to give equal opportunities to all Kenyans. So I'm urging His Excellency the President, because he has still time, let him go back and reconsider the issues that have been raised by people like Senator of Tana River, Senator Mugatana, and have a cabinet that represents all the 42 minorities of this country. That's the only time, Mr. Speaker, we will all have a sense of belonging and a sense of acceptance as Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, the next point I wanted to speak, Mr. Speaker, is when we say, Mr. Speaker, when we say that we want to respect the independence of the judiciary, Mr. Speaker, let that include the culture of us respecting decisions emanating from our courts of law. Mr. Speaker, not one, not twice, the High Court has ruled that the position of cabinet administrative secretaries is illegal, is unconstitutional, and it has no space in our Constitution. Mr. Speaker, we know that if you read the Constitution from Article 152 all through to 155, Mr. Speaker, we know the positions that create the cabinet. 152, Mr. Speaker, as the President, as the Deputy President, as the Attorney General, as ministers that are available for appointment by the minister. 154 as Secretary to the Cabinet. And more importantly, Mr. Speaker, 155 says that there will be principal secretaries who will be the administrators of these ministries. So, Mr. Speaker, this thing we hear called cabinet administrative secretaries has no space in our Constitution, Mr. Speaker. So if the President has told us in his speech that he wants to respect the independence of the judiciary and respect the decisions coming from the judiciary, Mr. Speaker, let us have a President who will exercise his powers as permitted within the confines of our Constitution.
Mr. Mugeni, do you wish to be informed by Senator Cherargei?
Is a point of information? You know, Mr. Speaker, Senator Cherargei is my junior, so I like hearing what he says so that he can keep learning. One day we'll also rise to become a senior counsel. But I want my time to be muted so that it doesn't eat into my time. Okay? And you'll be a good student.
You know, Senator Mugeni is my good friend. On a point of information, I wanted, and this is in public domain, the Public Service Commission has put out an advert to get the public opinion on the creation of Chief Administrative Secretary. So at this time, I just wanted to inform my learned senior that the process of regularizing within the law has started. The Chief Administrative Secretary will be a process through Public Service Commission. Kenyans will have opportunity. So I want to urge my brother, if they have reservations, they can relay with Public Service Commission. But I want to assure him the President of the Republic of Kenya, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, is committed to the rule of law and the Constitution. I thank you, my brother.
Okay. Senator Mugeni, maybe...
Mr. Speaker, I wanted to give Cherargei an opportunity because, as I said, he keeps learning. Mr. Speaker, I want to take Senator Cherargei to the provisions of Article 234 of the Constitution. Because, Mr. Speaker, when I rise to say something, I've read the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, the powers, I read the advert that was placed on the newspapers by Public Service Commission. The position that is being created are officers within the public service, not officers who can serve within the cabinet. So you must draw a distinction. They can create directors and all that, but you cannot create position of cabinet administrative secretary. Because if you read through Article 152, 153, 154, it has got no room. Mr. Speaker, this idea of going out of the way, trying to rewrite our constitution to reward political failures is a very bad culture, Mr. Speaker. If you have gone to the people, you have vied for political office, you have been rejected, wait for another 5 years, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, if the President wants to respect our judiciary, let him accept the reality that there is no space for appointment of cabinet as administrative secretaries, and that is the Constitution as it is today, and we need to respect it. Mr. Speaker, the other point I wanted to talk about is this idea of agriculture. Mr. Speaker, let's not be in a hurry, and in the process we kill Kenyans. In 2012, Mr. Speaker, a scientific report said that GMOs can cause cancer, Mr. Speaker. Now, in the name of saying you want to create food security, Mr. Speaker, we are allowing entrepreneurs. We are not promoting hustlers, as you told us. You are now allowing entrepreneurs from outside the borders of this country, Mr. Speaker, to come and poison our people, Mr. Speaker, with GMOs. Mr. Speaker, GMOs cause cancer. Why is our president in a hurry? If the cabinet halted this thing in 2012, Mr. Speaker, when did we have another study?
Senator Omugeni, maybe you might be entering into dangerous grounds because I know your profession is legal.
No, Mr. Speaker.
If you,
I'm on.
Maybe,
Mr. Speaker,
I'm
on paragraph 21.
You know, this is a national house parliament. Therefore, we must be very careful the message that we are giving Kenyans.
Mr.
So
Speaker,
maybe if
Mr. Speaker, you know,
you must really make good reference, Senator Mugeni, to that issue about how GMO causes cancer. Scientifically, if you prove to Kenyans Wanjiku who is out there who doesn't know what is a GMO, maybe even by the definition of GMO, so that now we can be able really to give the right information to Kenyans. So let us even not digress from the presidential address to the House.
Mr. Speaker, you know, Mr. Speaker, I respect the rules of this House.
Yes.
And I never rise before I've read fully.
Do you have some literature on GMO and how they can GMOs cause cancer?
Read paragraph 21 of His Excellency's speech.
No, I'm asking about how GMO can cause cancer. You can look for
page 21, Mr. Speaker. And you know, Mr. Speaker, when I speak about this, I'm passionate. Because,
no,
Mr.
my problem, when I'm presenting this House, Senator Mugeni, you know, I've given you a lot of latitude this afternoon. Because when I was in the other House, I really used to enjoy your debates. But now, when I'm presenting and then you make some references that might mislead Kenyans, that is my problem, my only problem. So maybe if you, Honorable Chalge, the chair is, so I wanted to know whether maybe you have that reference. Maybe if not today, you can be able to put it tomorrow or the day after tomorrow about cancer. That's scientific evidence that GMO can cause cancer.
Mr. Speaker, maybe the best way to prosecute that issue is that I will reserve my comments on that matter till I bring a substantive debate on that issue
now,
before the floor.
Okay, proceed.
So, Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, Mr. Speaker, and I don't know why Senator Fernand Cherage is not a good
Mugen has defined any issue on GMO until it delivers to this House.
Yes.
Submits some evidence. Or now GMO can cause cancer.
Yeah, and Mr.
So
Speaker,
let's not go back there.
Yes. And Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, Mr. Speaker, His Excellency the President has talked about his pledge to the small traders, to the hawker, to the mamamboga, to the makanga. Mr. Speaker, we were told that the Hustler Nation will be a government formed by hawkers, hecklers, the mamambogas, Mr. Speaker. And we were told, Mr. Speaker, that in the last government, BBI was about sharing positions. But, Mr. Speaker, I have not seen any mamamboga in the cabinet. I have not seen any hawker in the cabinet. Instead, Mr. Speaker, what I have seen is a sharing of positions, Mr. Speaker. So the president should not leave. The president, Mr. Speaker, is leaving behind the hawkers, the people who put him into office, Mr. Speaker. Instead, Mr. Speaker, of asking people who have already been elected to be in the cabinet, Mr. Speaker, these are the people the president should have brought on board, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue of food prices is still a problem, Mr. Speaker. You told us we'll lower the price of unga from 200 to 100. Mr. Speaker, I went to Ikonga market in my Nyamira county, Mr. Speaker. Yeah. Unga is costing...
Your time is up. Senator... No, your time is up, Senator Mugeni, kindly. Let us give other members also time to contribute. No, next time I'll be very magnanimous. Next time I sit here, I'll give you some more time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Then next is Tana River Senator Mungatana Danson, Buya.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to thank His Excellency, the President, for his exposition of public policy and where he needed us as the House, the desire of the people of Tana River and many of these other people from these arid and northern arid areas, that, Mr. Speaker, this Marshall Plan be done as fast as possible. Mr. Speaker, what is a Marshall Plan? Marshall was the Secretary of State for President Harry Truman many years ago in the US. And Mr. Speaker, George Marshall came up with an economic plan to help the areas that had been ravaged by war in Europe after the end of the World War. And America had not been hit so much. So the essence of the plan was that there would be a transfer of resources from one area friendly to another area. Mr. Speaker, this is what I'm thinking, and this is what I hope our policymakers who are listening to this speech will help us implement. Mr. Speaker, in this country, there has been a deliberate economic segregation of some areas of this nation. Sessional papers have legitimized this economic segregation of areas such as ourselves. Mr. Speaker, we pray that the President, in dealing with this matter of the hunger, he will effect that Marshall Plan. It is our prayer and our hope that resources will be made available, not to just save lives on the short term, as has always been the case with previous administration. But, Mr. Speaker, resources will be made available to our counties to help in production so that hunger can be an issue of the past. Mr. Speaker, I plead with His Excellency the President and those policymakers around them. The time has come that we should do away with the mentality of those sessional papers that legitimized the separation, economic separation of people within this country. So, Speaker, I pray that this will be the end of that, and we are very hopeful that the President will actualize the plan to create a new deal like President Roosevelt did for those disadvantaged areas in the US, that our counties, which are not as productive, will be helped to fit and to come up in this idea of bottom-up, so that those counties that are at the bottom now, Mr. Speaker, will be brought up. We preached this language. Our people have understood it, and we are waiting for action from the very highest level. Mr. Speaker, I want to speak to the issue of the National Government Constituency Development Fund. Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful that His Excellency the President stated in the opening of the House that he will support efforts to constitutionalize this fund. As I'm speaking to you, Mr. Speaker, in Tana River County, and I'm sure in many other counties, so many students who are dependent on the CDF bursaries have been sent back homes by the head teachers and principals. Mr. Speaker, we cannot demonize these head of institutions. We cannot say they shouldn't send these children home, because what are they going to feed them on? Mr. Speaker, these funds were a reality, and I know for a fact that there is a member of parliament from our county who was elected solely because he managed that CDF very well as far as bursaries were concerned. Every parent was saying, we will elect him because our children are not paying school fees. Mr. Speaker, these children are back home. Mr. Speaker, the President, and I know he's listening, must do something to the millions of Kenyans, not just in Tana River, but the whole country who are back at home. We as legislators, even our governors, we don't have the resources to pay for each and every individual to send them back to school where they belong. We risk, Mr. Speaker, creation of a generation of people who are going to stay at home, and then they become despondent. They will go back to doing all the things we told them not to do. They will start engaging in activities that we as parents do not wish them to engage in. So, Mr. Speaker, I pray that on the floor of this House, as I plead with the government, that, Mr. Speaker, temporary measures will be made between the Treasury and the Ministry of Education, that funds will be transferred to these schools. Those funds that Mr. Uhuru Yatani, the CS for Education for Treasury, told us he has not released them because he's waiting for an interpretation through the Attorney General of the opinion of the Supreme Court. We want, as that process is taking place, that intervening measures can be made, Mr. Speaker, that our children will not miss school. And I know that it is possible because this is a hustler's government. And they know what our people are going through now, Mr. Speaker. Something needs to be done as an interim measure. It is possible for government to work, government to government, the children to go back to school, even as the issues of the CDF are being resolved. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to speak on the issue of our democracy. The President spoke about the fact that our democracy was really maturing, that there was so much freedom that even the Deputy President, who is in government, becomes a candidate of the opposition, and then he goes to win, and the sitting president becomes a leader of the other side. And he said in a very positive way, this is what we are talking about, democracy in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, I want to mention something connected with the democracy in this country. We must legislate to increase the space for participation rather than reduce the space for participation. And in this occasion, Mr. Speaker, there was a judgment that has gone into everybody in this country about the qualifications that are requisite for somebody to run for governor. Mr. Speaker, in my opinion, I think we should continue to legislate in such a way that we increase the space and we don't reduce the space. Governors, people who have become governors have left this house. This house, senators have gone on to become governors. And in this house, we don't need to have a degree. Mr. Speaker, we are not in any way belittling education. But let us increase the space. And in that same note, let us increase the space for political parties to participate. Mr. Speaker, it is wrong, and it is wrong, and it is wrong for big political parties to continue to reap from the Treasury through the Office of Political Parties Registrar a lot of money that we are all paying, and yet the formula excludes all the small political parties. Mr. Speaker, we must legislate to increase the space. What am I saying? I'm saying if political parties present presidential candidates, they must be facilitated, whether they win or not. And if, Mr. Speaker, we are not going to get people being given facilitation because they are small, then let's all of us not have facilitation. Let the field be leveled. It is wrong for certain political parties to have billions they are owed by Treasury, and others which are coming up having nothing. Mr. Speaker, when do we grow political parties? When do we grow political space? Let us legislate in this country to increase the space rather than to decrease the space for democracy to flourish in this country. Mr. Speaker, I beg to support. Thank you.
Next, we have nominated Senator Oyomo Beatrice.
Honorable Speaker, I also want to add my voice to the speech made by His Excellency the President. I want to start by saying that His Excellency the President made notice of the growing confidence in the contribution of women leadership in decision-making in our governance and the political institutions. He not only made reference to the growing number of women that were elected into parliament and gave numbers, although the numbers are still insignificant, Honorable Speaker. My contribution is to the fact that in leading this country and having taken cognizance of that fact, I would like the President to demonstrate that contribution of women in the coming appointments that he will be making. I'm happy that a number have been made, have made it to the nomination list of the CSS. I want to state that the Kenyan women are looking forward to getting more names of fellow women in the forthcoming appointments that he'll be making as he firms up his government. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, the President laid his mission to dramatically scale up productivity in agriculture, fisheries, and pastoralism for sustainable economic growth, for food security, and for economic incomes. Honorable Speaker, the mention of fisheries excites me because I come from the Lake Victoria region. According to the Executive Order Number 1 of 2022, fisheries is listed under the State Department for Blue Economy in the Ministry of Mining, Blue Economy, and Maritime Affairs. Honorable Speaker, I want to state that there's all the reasons for retaining fisheries as a department rather than having it domiciled in other sectors. It is worth noting, Honorable Speaker, that fisheries of Lake Victoria accounts for such a high percentage in the total quantities and the total value of the national fish catches, respectively. And I want to make emphasize on some of the reasons why there is need, even if not from the Lake Victoria region, but for the country as a whole, to maintain fisheries as a department on its own. Fishing has a significant role in the provision of food security in this country, an area which His Excellency the President also mentions. And Honorable Speaker, removing fisheries as a distinct department, really the participation of this at the Lake Victoria Fisheries Organization, which is a regional organization, would be severely demeaned. Honorable Speaker, the Fisheries Department has been linked to other sister fisheries departments at the Lake Victoria Fisheries Organization, which is a regional fisheries management organization. Honorable Speaker, I want to emphasize once more that fisheries is a key contributor to the blue economy, and singling it out gives it the strength it deserves to attract investment and for collaborations of people who view the blue economy to be much of maritime and fishing. Honorable Speaker, to make it more clearer, fisheries is the common name for hustlers who understands what fish entails, and it sinks more with the masses in this country. Honorable Speaker, on the legislative agenda, His Excellency the President emphasized that his administration will rely on oversight to ensure the public get money for a value for money. And it is on the same note that while His Excellency was talking about the National Government Constituency Development Fund, NGCDF, and there was more emphasis also when it comes to the Senate on the setting up of the Senate Oversight Fund to be used to provide oversight on county funds. Your Excellency, I support this, the setting up of the Senate Oversight Fund, and I would like to say that whoever may be uncomfortable with this is somebody who is not keen on the growth of counties. Honorable Speaker, I support this.
Thank you, Senator Beatrice. Senator Governor Lobahali Hibulaim.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I stand to contribute to the address by the President to the two Parliament. And I would like to reflect on a few paragraphs among the other issues that has been already reflected on. One is the issue on paragraph 16, where the President has discussed and invited this House or Parliament as a whole, invited Parliament and in fact challenged them to create facilitative amendments in the standing orders where necessary. Provisions of the Constitution notwithstanding, and as Senate, I would like us to consider that point in order to make sure, rather than reflect what did not go right in the past, we should try and make right the opportunity that is provided by the President, His Excellency William Samoei Ruto. The other issue I'd like to reflect on is paragraph 41, where the President discussed on the issue of, managing the expenditure that is, blowing, where he discussed in paragraph 39 public borrowing, public debt to the tune of 900 billion. And in paragraph 41, where the President discussed his direction to National Treasury and various ministries on the reduction by combing through the numbers and getting 300 billion in this year's budget in order to reduce our borrowing burden. I want to, maybe this is the opportune time to revisit the report on Presidential Task Force on Parastatal reforms, which was carried out in 2013, but never implemented, which gives us the opportunity to really reduce on parastatals that are doing functions that are already devolved or duplication of functions in various parastatals, where the President will be able to really streamline and make sure that there are no duplication of responsibilities within various parastatals as contained in that report of the Presidential Task Force on Parastatal Reforms in 2013. Maybe this is an opportune moment for that to take place. And lastly, I would like to reflect on, not lastly, second but not the least, number 45, paragraph 45, where the President discussed the issue of NSSF, National Social Security Fund.
given priority on the order paper this afternoon, that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Orders 27, subsection 6, the Senate will be recording for exposition of public policy contained in the address of the President during the opening of the 13th Parliament that was delivered on Thursday, 29th September 2022. A couple of papers will be tabled before this House this afternoon, and the Senate calendar for regular sessions for the first session of the 13th Parliament, and this particular first session ranges from September to December 2022, is one of the papers that is set to be laid on the floor or to be tabled this afternoon, as well as a couple of reports from the Office of the Auditor General on how various state departments used their monies for the year ended 30th June 2018, 2016, 2019, as well as 2020. The approval of the Senate calendar for the first session of the 13th Parliament is under the notices of motion this afternoon that will be laid on the table this afternoon. The business of the Senate is about to kick off any moment from now. The Deputy Speaker of the Senate is in the chambers, and I'll hand you over so we can follow up on the live proceeding. Enjoy your viewing and good afternoon.
Kwa neema nyingi na baraka sisi watumishi wako ambao umeridhika kutuita kwa nyadhifa za uongozi katika jamhuri hii yetu. Tunakuomba utujalie tuyatende na kufikiria mambo yote atakayofikishwa mbele yetu kwa njia ya haki na uaminifu, ili kustawisha amani, ufanisi na heri ya nchi yetu na wale ambao haja zao umezikabidhi mikononi mwetu. Honorable members, I've confirmed that we have quorum. Let's proceed.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Honorable Senator, can you make your way kindly? Honorable members, this is communication number 008 of 2022 concerning pupillage, internship, and attachment programs in the Senate. Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's gallery this afternoon 8 young men and women who are undertaking pupillage, attachment, and internship programs. The objective of these programs is to provide young people with first-hand experience in the legislative process and to expose them to the intricate one of public policy and public service. I request each person to stand when called out so that they may be acknowledged in the usual Senate tradition. They are, number 1, Kenneth Ouko, undertaking pupillage. Number 2, Kande Kelubo Moguche, undertaking pupillage. Number 3, Florence Muende Muinde, undertaking pupillage program. Number 4, Ekorere Ndaise Santana, undertaking pupillage. Number 5, Miranda Lawrence, undertaking an attachment program. Number 6, Emma Oginga, undertaking an attachment program. Number 7, Jeffrey Ojar, attachment program. Number 8, Maria Atwori, internship. On behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, I welcome you to the Senate and wish you well during the programs. I thank you. Yes, Honorable Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to just take a moment to welcome these young Kenyans that are undergoing one of the most important programs that we run as Parliament. I say this, Mr. Speaker, because this is one of our living legacies as members of the 4th PSC. This program, Mr. Speaker, is one of the most competitive in the country for pupillage programs. In fact, Mr. Speaker, if you speak to many young lawyers in the country, they'll tell you that despite Parliament not being considered, quote unquote, as what maybe many young people will consider as a prestigious posting in terms of a law firm or something. But this program has given opportunity to many, many young people to join the ranks of Parliament after having served and gained experience in this pupillage program. The way it is administered, Mr. Speaker, is such that we pick the best of the applicants after an interview from each of our 47 counties. We cannot pick 47 at a go. Therefore, it takes us actually 3 years to go through our entire list of 47 counties. So I do not know each of these pupils individually, but I bet, Mr. Speaker, that if you ask each of them, you will hardly find any 2 that are from the same county. It tells you that this program is administered by our very competent staff, members of staff who are well-ranking in the legal profession.
Okay, Senator Redama, thank you.
So, Mr. Speaker, I continue with my contribution. So, Mr. Speaker, the President alluded to the fact that he's going to have an open and transparent government. He also said that he's going to be a firm believer in democracy and rule of law. Mr. Speaker, as on this side, we want the President to live to his word. Because some of the actions that he has started doing do not live to this spirit, Mr. Speaker. When you talk about the issues of belief in democracy, you say it, but we have seen the President himself poaching members from this other side and engaging in illegal post-election agreements. When the law is very clear, you can only have one coalition agreement at a time. We had a very serious debate here yesterday on the same that touches we saw NSSF during Kanu government. How money was stolen in that institution. We cannot say we want to put more money in NSSF without restructuring NSSF, without removing corruption, without removing misplaced investments that happen in NSSF. So we are saying, Mr. President, it's good to increase the deduction to NSSF, but make sure that that NSSF is restructured so that Kenyans have confidence to put their money in it. Mr. Speaker, the President also talked about Hustlers Fund. I want to join my colleague and my friend, Senator Khalwari, that unless we have a proper legislation in place, proper structures in place, this will be another avenue for corruption. So this House, I beseech you, let us not appropriate any money, the Parliament, National Assembly, and even this Senate, to this fund without a proper legislation and structures in place. Because we are no longer in the campaign environment. We are now working for Kenyans. And therefore, we must ensure that there is value for money and the proper accountability of the funds of Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, I'm so disappointed with this speech, because in his speech, he never talked about corruption. And this has been the tendency of the other side. In their rallies, in their meetings, they don't talk about corruption, because they are beneficiaries of corruption. We expected the President to tell us one way of ensuring that this country has money is to fight corruption. Because we are told this country is losing 2 billion shillings a day. In a year, it's about 700 billion shillings a year. This is enough money to inject into the economy and improve this economy. So we are wondering how the President is going to implement all these promises he's giving us without fighting corruption, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Boni Karwale, what
Because
is out of order?
Fight against corruption is key
and also
and is a cancer in this country.
The standing order that you are standing on.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member
which is standing order?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I look at standing order number 98. And number 98, Mr. Speaker, with all due respect, does not ask any senator to state any standing order, but to explain. So, Mr. Speaker, be that as it may, Mr. Speaker, this is important. We are all united here to fight corruption for a better Kenya. So when a member of this Senate alleges that we are corrupt, and he knows that the 2 billion shillings he's saying that was getting lost every day was at the office of the President of the handshake government, the same handshake government, Mr. Speaker, the same handshake government that stole the money for Corona, and the money was received by relatives and friends of one of the partners of handshake, Mr. Speaker, you must find that under 98 is grossly out of order.
Olekina, let him finish his point of order, then you can execute yours. Senator Olekina.
Yes. Mr. Speaker,
this is a house of record. And it's a bit ludicrous for a seasoned politician and a legislator to start here and mislead this house. Standing Order 98.1 is very explicit, and it says clearly that 98.1, any senator may raise on a point of order at any time during the speech of another senator, stating that the senator raises a point of order and the senator shall be required to indicate the standing order upon which the point of order is based. So, Mr. Speaker, when the majority whip mislead this House that there is no such standing order, and we leave that on record, Mr. Speaker, we'll be setting a very bad precedent. So, Mr. Speaker, I would like to request the majority whip, sorry, I keep calling you minority, majority whip, to withdraw his statement and apologize, because these standing orders are here to guide us. They're not just here for the sake of it. It is pure English. And this is a man who speaks English better than people in Butere or Naro. So please, just read it clearly and then correct it. Withdraw. 98.1.
Senator Karwale, can you maybe
I
confirm that what Senator Redama has just said is true
Mr.
and
Speaker,
correct? 98.1.
Mr. Speaker, I am lucky that I was one of the people who crafted these standing orders. And Mr. Speaker, the intention of standing order number 98.1 does not require that when you stand, you must say standing order number 105. Wait, why don't you listen? You have already acknowledged that I know how to speak English. It says, at the pleasure of this plenary, you can be challenged when you are looking to be irrelevant. But if a member of parliament rises on a point of order and clearly the issue is articulating, is referring to a point of order which is somewhere, you cannot expect every member to be remembering every point of order when they stand up, however brilliant you are. But you must remain within the standing orders.
Senator Karwale, with due respect, you know that is why we have the rules of the House. Every member is supposed to acquaint himself or herself with the rules of the House, so that you can be on this. So you cannot dismiss a standing order which has been okayed by this House. You know, these standing orders are products of this House.
True, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand guided, but my reading of this standing order so that the country understands me and my colleagues here.
Maybe the member who does not know the standing order can consult the veterans
Mr.
and
Speaker,
know which standing order you'll issue.
Yes,
because
Mr.
that
Speaker,
way we shall
I
be
stand
orderly
guided.
in the House, will be orderly and will be transacting business.
Mr. Speaker, I stand guided, but my reading of this standing order is that this is a warning to any member that do not stand on a frivolous point of order. But it does not, in this one, say at what point thou shall be expected to state. That's my departure. And because my brother went to the US where black people speak very broken English, probably this is why he's not seeing...
Honestly, let us use parliamentary language, you know, kindly. What is out of order, Senator Veronica? Just a minute. Senator Veronica, Waeti.
I raise point of order. Order.
Senator Gloria, you're out of order, Senator Gloria. Members are raising on a point of orders. If you have one, I'll give you an opportunity as well. Okay,
Mr. Speaker,
Senator
sir,
Veronica.
if I have the floor, I raise under Standing Order 105 to respond to Senator Otsotsi in respect of his reference to the loss of 2 billion shillings per day. Mr. Speaker, Standing Order number 105 indicates that a senator shall be responsible for the accuracy of any fact that the senator alleges to be true and may be required to substantiate any such facts instantly. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to bring it to your attention that the statement that has been thrown to the floor of this House has no relevance absolutely to the current speech of the President and must be withdrawn. And I want to invite you, Mr. Speaker, sir, that under Standing Order 105(2), if a senator has sufficient reason to convince the Speaker that the senator is unable to substantiate the allegations instantly, the Speaker shall require that such senator substantiates the allegations not later than the next sitting day, failure to which the senator shall be deemed to be disorderly within the meaning of Standing Order 121, unless the senator withdraws the allegations and gives a suitable apology if the Speaker so requires. I want to invite you, Mr. Speaker, to request the Honourable Senator to withdraw that statement as unbecoming, not relevant, not part of the speech that is before the House, and to give a suitable apology under that standing order.
Senator Olsosi, Senator Veronica has actually, I want to commend you, Senator Veronica, for really very accurate on the standing order that you raise upon, because many colleagues here are not able to quote the standing orders under which they are raising. So, Honorable Senator Otsotsi, there is the statement you made about the 2 billion, which let me get the fact right, Senator Veronica. Who is supposed to substantiate this matter? Because I'm told assistance that is Senator Mboni Karwale, who talked about the 2 billion. Yes. So the answer is capturing Senator Mboni Karwale, not the Senator Otsotsi.
Mr. Speaker, sir, just to remind you, and you can confirm, that statement has been given by Senator Otsotsi. This is a house of integrity. He's the first one to refer to it. Mr. Speaker, sir, do I have your ear?
If then we are not sure, we'll consult the answer.
No, Mr. Speaker, sir,
minutes.
I will just remind you, he is the one who has given that statement on the floor of the House. That's a heavy statement, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is not an issue that can be tossed around. He has even referred to some people as thieves. It is not a statement that should be taken lightly. He's not even denying.
Senator Otsotsi, before we consult the answer, confirm or deny that you are
Mr.
not the one who
sir,
made the
can he now withdraw?
No, Senator Otsotsi, can you, before we consult the answer, and you know, because I'll ask the clerks to Senator Otsotsi, can you kindly confirm or deny that you did not make such allegations? And then the consequences, you know, will follow you. No, I'm Senator Otsotsi. You either confirm or deny that you do not make such allegations before we consult the answer.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, if the answer is produced, I can remember what I said. I said we have been told. We have been told. And then my good friend Halware came in and gave specific information. So I think I have nothing to substantiate. I have nothing to substantiate.
You know, Senator Otsotsi, you know the consequences.
Yeah. And then, Mr. Speaker, which one? Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to draw your attention to Standing Order number 105-2 that states, if a senator has sufficient reason to convince the Speaker that the senator is unable to substantiate the allegations instantly, the Speaker shall require that such senator substantiates the allegation not later than the next sitting day, failure to which the senator shall be deemed to be disorderly, within the meaning of Standing Order number 121, unless the senator withdraws the allegations and gives a suitable apology, if the Speaker requires so. So, Mr. Speaker, I am requiring that we produce the Hansard.
So, I want to make a very...
No.
I want to make a very quick ruling that I will consult the answer, and tomorrow afternoon we will be able to give direction on what should happen. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know, I think this is just a strategy to
That matter
eat
is
into my
already
time.
ruled. I've already ruled on that matter.
But nevertheless, I will continue.
Who was on the floor?
I was on the floor.
Yeah, finish. Kindly finish up. Very
Mr.
fast.
Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I require your protection. I require your protection.
On the matter of consulting the answer, I think I've made the right ruling.
Yeah. Let me proceed then.
But what?
Mr. Speaker,
Senator made what I made the ruling. That you should just press the intervention key and please keep quiet. Please. Please. Yes. No. You press and wait for your time for intervention.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I need your protection from members on this other side.
I told you to proceed, Senator. So what is the problem?
From your shouting. Mr. Speaker, just to wind up my contribution, we had a lot of expectation when we went to listen to the president. But some of us left there very disappointed. Because one of the expectations I had as a senator representing the people of Vihiga was for the president to tell the House a lot more about the bottom-up economic model that they were telling us during the campaign. How are we going to legislate about it? How are we going to put finances in it? The president did not tell us anything about it.
Senator Medhu Nyandarua, what is out of order again?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Standing order number? Which number?
We are trying to do what we are supposed to do. And I want to quote Standing Order 122 E. That a senator shall be out of order if he deliberately gives false information to the Senate. Senator Godfrey Osotsi, a respectable senator from Vihiga, has given false information because he says that in the address of the president, he has not. I'm not speaking about what you have spoken. The speaker ruled on the 2 billion. Speaker Godfrey Osotsi, in his submission, alleges that the president never mentioned anything about corruption. And if you look at the 19 of the address of the president,
Mr. Speaker, point of order.
I'm on a point of order, Speaker.
It's a frivolous point of order.
If you look at the address of the president, number 19, it is in this period that I will be seeking additional resources to support the bottom-up scaling of justice and empower the judiciary to acquire capacity and develop infrastructure needed to more efficiently adjudicate and expeditiously conclude corruption cases. So, in my opinion,
give him time
Speaker,
to execute his stand.
the senator for Vihiga is completely out of order to mislead the House that the president in his address did not address on issues on corruption. Thank you very much, Speaker.
Thank you. So, Senator also kindly conclude. You have 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just to wind up, my last point is that the president, in his speech, recommended that that the ministries adjust their budget by 300 billion shillings to support the saving program. Mr. Speaker, we would like to know more about this, and I'm sure maybe the budget will come to Parliament. We want to know where is he going to get this money. Is he going to cut people's salary, allowances? And then again, it's contradictory, Mr. Speaker, because as the president is talking about reducing the expenditure in government, he has gazetted additional state departments. He has appointed people called the cabinet level appointments, the so-called advisors, which is going to eat more money from the exchequer. So, Mr. Speaker, I find that to be contradictory, and I'm saying that the president's speech was contradictory. It fell short of the expectation of Kenyans, and it was not presidential.
Your time is out.
Point of order, Mr.
I want to hear this point of order from Senator Korir Chepkoech Joyce. Okay, we have the intervention. Chelakei Samson. Senator Chelagei.
Okay.
Kiplotich.
Mr. Speaker, there is an issue that was raised on the floor of the House. And I think when you look at Standing Order 121 and 122, I know this matter will come up ruling tomorrow in the afternoon. It is not wise and fair for members to, in terms even of point of relevance under the Standing Order, Mr. Speaker, to raise things that are outside the purview of presidential address. Because, for example, if you raise about bottom-up, Mr. Speaker, yes, in the presidential speech, he has talked about the Hustlers Fund. So, Mr. Speaker, these senators who are speaking to this address of the president must acquaint themselves to Standing Order 121 and 122. Mr. Speaker, and I want to call upon you, don't be merciful. The only mercy we have is of Jesus Christ. Any other mercy is imported. So if somebody makes unsubstantiated allegation in the floor of the House, Mr. Speaker, deal with them firmly and ruthlessly. We are not in somewhere in Vihiga. In fact, the Senator also should be grateful that Senator one of his constituents is the Prime Cabinet Secretary in Kenya Kwanza government. He should be grateful instead of fighting the government. How can you bite the hand that feeds you? You can't. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Chelagei, you know I've been here for the last now 3.5 hours, going to 4 hours. And this House can really agree with me that I've done so well. This is my first time to sit in this chair. And therefore also I want to remind you that Honorable Senator Sosi's life is all in the hand because there is a ruling expecting tomorrow in this floor. We are consulting the answer. So my rulings are very objective and I think I've no. Of course, I'm merciful. That is my inborn. I have had some kind of mercy. But nobody will abuse it. I want to assure you, nobody will abuse that trait. Therefore, next is Senator Tobiko.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr.
And I
Speaker.
said, members, if possible, you can save a few minutes so that other colleagues can also be heard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the motion on the presidential speech to both houses of parliament, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I heard the Honorable Osotsi, let me just begin from there, saying that the President did not expound on the bottom-up economy that the hustler movement have been talking about to Mwananchi. And I thought it's good to just tell the Honorable Osotsi, the good senator of Vihiga, who also served with me at the National Assembly, that actually the president's speech was full of the bottom-up tenets that we had told, that we sold to all Kenyans, and that Kenyans bought and elected Dr. William Samoei Ruto as the President of the Republic of Kenya. And I'm going to mention a few, so that I don't go into the entire speech. I'm going to mention a few of what the hustler movement or the hustler leadership promised Kenyans. And some of the low-hanging fruits that have already been, implemented and have already benefited Kenyans. There is the cheap fertilizer that the President had talked about through and through. And the first thing he did when he got into office was to lower the pricing of fertilizer by around 2,000. I think by the time we were campaigning, it was around 6,500, I think. And now ASAC is going at around 3,500. So that is one of the many things that compose of the bottom-up economy. because we want productivity, and I think the president had also elaborated a lot on emphasizing productivity, agricultural productivity, both farmers, livestock, and fishing in this country instead of subsidies on foodstuffs. And I think we are in the right direction, Mr. Speaker, that the president started actually immediately he got in, and Kenyans right now, hopefully when we get into the rain season, productivity is going to improve in this country in all sectors, whether it is in the fishing communities, whether it is in the farming communities or the pastoralists, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the president had also mentioned a lot and emphasized on affordable housing, which is also quite elaborated in the presidential speech, Mr. Speaker, that all Kenyans deserve, and according to the Constitution, have the right to affordable living, decent housing. And that is why the president appealed to both houses that we should embrace and enhance the government policy on affordable housing, so that every Kenyan can afford a house, can live in good conditions, can be in homes that have running water and electricity. In this speech, Mr. Speaker, that one is also very much elaborated. Mr. Speaker, in the presidential speech, Mr. Speaker, there was the issue of the Hustler Fund. It is really one of the main things of the bottom-up economy that we were talking about during the campaigns. And the president confirmed and affirmed that he will allocate 50 billion every year for the Hustler Fund in order to help Mama Mboga, in order to help the boda guys, in order to enhance, the small enterprises, Mr. Speaker. I think the president, everything that he said in his speech was underscoring the bottom-up economy. He expounded what the Kenya Kwanza plan or our manifesto had on affordable credit. Actually, the president in his speech alluded to the fact that a day before he had spoken to the guys of, to the operators of Fuliza and M-Shwari, and they had indicated, and they had given word to the president that they are going to lower their credit cost by 40%. I think we are on the right track. I think the president really has preached until it has become like a Bible about the bottom-up economy, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the president began by appreciating Kenyans and the members who got elected, and the steps we have made as a country, particularly in having women in leadership. The constituency holders have increased to around 29 from what was there initially around 23. The retention in both houses, the Senate and the National Assembly, is much better than it was before. But Mr. Speaker, I had something to say about the women in elective positions. Mr. Speaker, political parties in this country still have a long way to go. And I am sure all the women who got elected, be it governors, be it constituency holders, be it women reps, have a story to tell of the hurdles that political parties are still putting for women across this country. And there will be a better representation. There will be a better percentage of women. Actually, 1/3 can be achieved because Kenyans are ready to elect women now. But the mindset of political parties is yet to change, Mr. Speaker, because women in this country are still relegated to nomination slots, Mr. Speaker, whereas women have gotten into competitive politics, and Kenyans have proved that they trust women leadership even much more if given a fair chance, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, going forward in our country, we would want to see, you know, a fair playing ground in political parties, so that we have elected women senators like the Honorable Mutembei I can see coming in, and the others, Mr. Speaker, who have come through the elective position. You know, Mr. Speaker, I think as a country, and having the president who we know has actually was supported possibly by more than 50% of the women electorate of this country, I am sure he's going to enhance that space. I am sure he's going to, you know, help Kenyan women to achieve the 1/3 representation in both houses, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the president had talked about effective oversight in both houses, and even proposed that there should be an oversight fund, possibly in the, you know, to help the Senate undertake its duty of effective oversight over the counties, Mr. Speaker. I think this should be a very welcomed gesture by this, for this House, and even the National Assembly, on the issue of the Constituency Development Fund, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, because I represented a constituency, Kajiado East constituency, for 2 terms in the National Assembly, and I know the importance of the Constituency Development Fund at the constituency level. Mr. Speaker, I can for sure vouch for the members of the National Assembly that the Constituency Development Fund should be retained. There must be a way that even the judiciary should understand, because laws are meant to help human beings and not to curtail, you know, the benefits for our communities, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the children depend on the bursaries in CDF. Mr. Speaker, you know, because you also represented the constituencies, that we used CDF to build a lot of schools, Mr. Speaker, and to build police stations and do roads, Mr. Speaker, and this fund should not be lost, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, because I can see that maybe possibly, I don't know whether I have taken more than my time allocated, but I just wanted to convince the Honorable Osotsi and the others who are casting aspersions and doubts on the presidential speech, that actually he has, I think he has even internalized, and most of us here, particularly from the Kenya Kwanza team, have internalized the bottom-up tenets, and they are well expounded in the presidential speech, and we would urge you to support it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
You have just used the time that was allocated for you precisely. Senator Oloba Magoma Gloria.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity, finally. I want to just mention a few things about the President's speech, particularly about the 50 billion Hustlers Fund. One of the observations that I think that has been made in this House previously on the funds that have been there is that they're not really sustainable. Uwezo Fund that was supposed to be a revolving fund was actually misused and politicized. And so this is actually very refreshing to know that we have a government that is willing to cure the problems of the existing funds. And I actually want to take this opportunity to urge that when that piece of legislation, because it will come to the floor of the House, when it comes to the floor of the House, that we push, that we ensure that we are curing the problems that the likes of Uwezo Fund and Youth Fund and the Women Fund have. You will note that as a nominated senator who was nominated under the gender top-up, but actually I'm a youth advocate and has been pushing for the empowerment of youth. One of the things that has been a big problem with empowerment of the youth in terms of funds is that there is no sustainability of the same. And speaking to the President, His Excellency William Ruto, we discussed on issues on how this fund is going to be dispatched. And I'm glad that in his speech, he actually articulated that one of the things that they are going to use or to push is that we will use technology to push for this fund in terms of management of the fund, in terms of distribution of the fund. And I just want to say, and I hope that when the piece of legislation comes to the House, that I will be supported, that it is time that Uwezo Fund and Youth Fund and Women Fund and any other existing fund that has not actually been impactful, I hope that we will be able to collapse it and replace it with the Hustlers Fund, with the intention that any beneficiary of that fund would at least at the bare minimum undergo a training, a basic business training, such that, because if you read from the speech, it says on 28 that my administration will allocate 50 billion every year to the Hustlers Fund from the micro, small and medium enterprises so that they can access a start and to expand their businesses. Mr. Speaker, you'll find that for Uwezo Fund, we were actually being encouraged to go as groups. And once they go as a group, they get whatever money is there, they distribute the money, but there was no business that was being started. And at one point, politicians, some of them in this House, started using it as a sort of token to give to the electorate. But what they did not understand was that at the end of the day, when that fund ceases to be a revolving fund, then the same electorate will blame you for, impoverishing their lives. So for the Hustlers Fund, I think this is a good direction that we are taking. And I hope that my fellow senators will assist when the bill comes to the House, that we push that one of the legal frameworks that we'll place is that we have PPPs, that is the partnerships with the CBOs and the NGOs that are already offering free business skills training, such that it is a prerequisite before you receive that fund that you undergo a business skills training, a short course of 1 month, and that they receive. Another thing I want to touch on, and it's probably the last one, is on the digital technologies. In his speech, our president actually stated that digital technologies have become a critical player in economic growth. And it is time that we capitalize on them. I speak from a point of information. I actually, before I was a senator, worked as a manager of the data center of Facebook in Denmark. And one thing that I really hope we will practice political obscurity when that bill comes to this floor is that when we have to hold this big organizations such as Facebook and Google and Amazon accountable in terms of them remitting taxes to this country, that we will be able to vote as a House in the interest of the electorate and our people, because it is known that these organizations are currently not operating locally. They are based somewhere in a cloud abroad. That technically has exported the jobs that we have for the youth have been exported to these other places where they are operating. So I was very happy to hear that the digital economy is going to be, let's say, prioritized, because it is time that this House brings legislation that will hold these companies accountable, that will localize our data and where we store it, and also that we ensure our workers who at the moment, if you are aware, for instance, for Facebook, they are operating as a proxy in this company. And one of the things that they have done is that they have outsourced their employees. So therefore, you cannot sue Facebook when they are actually mistreating their employees. The employees do not have benefits in terms of housing, in terms of medical cover. They do not have benefits because they're operating as contractors. And so for me, I would say that it is a very good time to serve in the Senate because I am passionate about these things, and I really hope that when those bills come to the House, I already have tabled a bill in terms of localizing our data so that we can hold these companies accountable. I hope that my fellow senators will support the president into turning the digital economy into an economy that is actually impactful to this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. As you can see, this is just by the way. I do not know which rule to follow, but it is very unfair for senators to walk in at 6 o'clock and shine so that they can be recorded at the Hansard, and then walk out and have that as a contribution. That is something that we should, because some of us we are coming here to work, to sit through the motions and listen, and I think it is very unfair that these people that something should be done, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Gloria. Honourable members, it is now 6:30 p.m. time to adjourn the House. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until Thursday, tomorrow, 6th of October 2022 at 2:30 p.m.
I don't know if that is a question I understand, but if you are saying who I am, yes, of course, many people would say I'm Moses Cheboy.